Last night, I finished reading the second Daughter of Darkness, Prince of Bloodshed book. I gave it a 4 stars. 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Because it's a book that, I liked it, but at the same time, there was a lot of, excuse me, maybe dramatizations that I was like, let's just move on with the story. I get it. You love that person. You absolutely adore that person. I get it. Let's move on with the story. And maybe I just didn't have patience to deal with it as well. So, at the end of the last book, I wasn't exactly sure what happened with Eleanor. She was bringing Azran back to life. And it sounded like she was dying in the process, but she's the main character. And so it's all taken care of in this book. We got it. So it starts off with Azran heading across seas to the continent where the king of Zitria is. Zetria? His name is Erdan, anyway. And so we've got Azran's perspective, we've got Eleanor's perspective, Kaelin's perspective, and we've got a new perspective, Nilren. Sorry. I just came back from a bike ride, so my lungs are like, hold up. Anyway, so he's going across sea and he is longing for his mate, Eleanor. Great. Typical thing. So he's going over there to find out what Brayern, the main bad guy of the last book, what kind of deal he had with Erdan, because they know that his success came from across seas. So Azran's heading out there, Kaelin's in charge. Eleanor is in like a comatose state, and we get her perspective. She is walking through the land of the dead, but she's not dead. Sorry. She's not dead, but she's walking through the land of the dead. So she's got Savage, her little wolf friend that died in the last book, hanging out with her, and she's got other spirits that she's seeking. And basically it's her choice. Do you want to stay in the land of dead, or do you want to go back to the land of living? Do you have stuff to do still? But they've got her kind of like a Snow White type thing in a bed. Moore is watching over her. And that's another thing I kind of wanted to mention. There's a lot of similarities between the names in this book and the names in the Court of Thorns and Roses books by Sarah J. Maas. We've got Azran, Azrael. We've got Moore, who is also gay character. And he is, sorry if I spoiled that court. Anyway, he's like the main doctor and everything. You've got Cal, which is kind of like Cassian, except Cal. Sorry. And so you've got those main characters, and then you've got an evil king across the seas and a good but monstrous, anyway, morally great character, main character, whatever. There's a lot of similarities there, and I just thought it was funny. Sorry. So anyway, Callan is in charge of the main country. What's it called? Like I said, I'd probably remember this better if I wasn't reading several books at a time. And people ask me, how do you read multiple books at a time? And I can keep the story straight. I just can't always remember the names. The Kingdom of Bramora is the human area. Lona is the whole continent type thing, and Averion is the capital of the Fae territories, which includes the Sun Fae, the Water Fae, the Moon Fae, and the Wood Fae. Oh, good gravy. And then you've got the other map, which is Zetria. Going over, the capital is Nis. Okay, anyway. Sorry. Callan is in charge of Averion, and Vesta is with him. They're wondering when Eleanor is going to wake up. I can't really say much about Callan's story because I don't understand it entirely, but we know that Azrin went over the seas. We know that Eleanor's in a coma-like state, and so he's in charge, and they've got attraction going on between Vesta and Callan, of course. I don't think there's much importance in that area, at least to the main storyline, to my perspective. And somebody reading this might be like, oh, there's a lot of importance there. I don't see it, and maybe I just don't care too much about the details, and that's fine. Anyway, Eleanor wakes up. She decides to come back, and she goes to talk to Morn and says something about, is my power related to the god of death? And he just kind of smiles and says, well, yeah. After hanging out in Averion for a while, finding out that Azrin is overseas, and that's why the bond between them feels so faint, and they haven't heard from Azrin for a while, she decides to go over to Zetria to follow him to see if she can find him. And she wasn't going to let them know that she was the unifier. So Callan lets her go against his better advice, but she goes. There's a scene that flashes back to Azrin, and he's like bloodied and like limping and trying to get somewhere, escape from somewhere. So we know he's in trouble. We don't know what caused it. She gets over to Zetria. She meets Erdan, and she meets Nilren. Nilren rolls off the tongue easier. She meets Nilren. She doesn't know what to think of them. She's hiding her true identity. But Erdan calls her out, and he captures basically both her and Azrin and has them in collars that suppress their magic, so that they're unable to fight. And he tortures them. But he's slowly descending into madness. He keeps seeing his deceased wife, Nilren's mom, and he's talking to her like she's actually there. So he keeps seeing her spirit, maybe. Anyway, Nilren has these thoughts of vengeance against his father, taking his father out, so that he can become king. And you don't really know what kind of person Nilren is. It's like he wants to be a torturous person to please his father. So there's some of his chapters that are like, yeah, I'm just as bad as my dad. I can torture people, and I like letting them escape and seeing how far they can get, and studying the bond between mates and such. But I don't have a mate, and I never want a mate because that's weakness. And I'm not sure about his character. It's just weird. So anyway, there's chapters of Azrin being tortured, but not as many as Eleanor being tortured. Mind games where she thinks she's escaped, and she gets all the way to Erdan's bedroom, goes to try and kill him, and then finds out that she's not actually escaped. She's still tied to a chair. And go back to Callan's over there in Averion, and he is playing a role, assuming, since they haven't heard from Azrin or Eleanor, that they've abandoned them, and he decides to take over Averion. And the people reject him, calling him a usurper. So then he and Vesta head over to Zetria with the deception in mind that they're going to basically work with Erdan and take over the entire area, Lona and Zetria. So he sees Azrin and Eleanor down there in the dungeon, and he mocks them, and just kind of walks away. So he's still pretending. gives Azrin a symbol that Azrin doesn't pick up on, because in that state, how are you going to pick up on that? So anyway, Eleanor digs deep into her reservoir and ends up lighting herself on fire and getting out of the dungeon. She burns through the bars, she kills the guards, and her and Azrin escape. And they meet up with Callan, and Azrin thinks he's still a traitor, but it turns out that it's all a ruse, of course. So they try to escape. Callan goes back to play his role with Erden and Nilred, and pretends like he's leaving to check out the southern area of the continent where there's rumored to be a bunch of rebels and such. So he goes down there. And then Azrin and Ella make their way down there after escaping Niths. And they're able to get on a boat, and they're able to come back to Everion, where all is well, but they have to prepare for war against Erden because they know he's going to come and try and take over. So they do. They work on getting their strength back. Probably the key points to this story is when the battle is happening, the final battle. There's a lot of bloody stuff going on, and Vesta and Callan finally proclaim their love. And they both survive. Azrin and Ella both die. So they find out where Erden is. He puts the collars on him again, gets the collars on him again. Nilren tries to murder his dad, but his dad ends up murdering him, choking him to death. And Erden makes Ella watch as he uses her sword, Natar, to kill Azrin. And then she goes full death on him because she is the embodiment of... She is basically the death god, so her name is Death. She is the death god. And so she brings out revenge. Pretty much every dead person, she takes their souls to go take it out on Erden's soldiers, the living soldiers. And then comes Mor, who finds his way there, and she describes it as a bright light. And we find out that he is actually the god of justice. And he guides her towards a better solution than revenge. So she stops her murder spree, and she allows all the souls to go to rest. And we find out that Azrin is the embodiment of the god of war. So he is war, or Ares. I guess he could be Ares. She could be Hades, if you want to liken it to Greek mythology. So anyway, they're both dead in the very end. Callan ends up becoming High Lord of the Fey territories. Vesta's his basically main general. And then we also get a scene with War and Death, aka Azrin and Eleanor, living their best lives, I guess. So not a bad storyline, pretty interesting. It was just, I don't know if I'd ever read it again, but I might, to try and understand maybe a little bit more things. But there were some things that I thought were a little muddy in the details. I didn't think the Lady of the Moon Fae, Amryn, there was another Court of Misty and Fury similarity. I didn't think she was had much importance to the story. It's almost like they were trying to get her importance in the story, but the main story, there wasn't really much she could... Anyway, not a bad storyline. Not terrible. Not the best. I liked it. I didn't love it.